Imagine a land where the desert whispers rebellion, where the scars of war are etched into every village, yet the people refuse to bow. For decades, the Sahel, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, has been a chessboard for foreign powers, its sands stained with promises of security that never materialized. Armies came, drones flew, billions were spent, but the violence only grew. Villages burned, families fled, and local soldiers died while foreign bases stood untouched. The Sahel was a paradox, a region drowning in aid yet starving for sovereignty. But on June 20th, 2025, something shifted. In Bamako, three nations, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, did the unthinkable. They didn't ask for help. They didn't wait for approval. They forged a single unified army under the Confederation of Sahel States, AES, a force that answers to no one but themselves. This isn't just a military, it's a declaration of independence, a middle finger to a world that thought Africa couldn't stand alone. Why now? What threat looms so large that it demands a continental army to patrol the Sahel's endless dunes? Is this the spark of Africa's most powerful alliance, or a gamble that could reshape the continent's future? From the dusty halls of the Alliance Blondine Way peacekeeping school to the war-torn borders of Gao and Niamey, this is the story of a region rewriting its destiny. A story of soldiers who stopped dying for someone else's war plan. A story of a Sahel that's no longer waiting to be saved, it's saving itself. Join us as we uncover the truth behind this historic moment and what it means for Africa's future.
It wasn't supposed to start here. Bamako, Mali's bustling capital, has long been a city of contradictions. Vibrant markets humming with life, yet shadowed by the ghosts of coups and peacekeeping missions. For years, its diplomatic halls echoed with the voices of foreign envoys, their promises of stability dissolving like mirages in the Sahel's relentless heat. UN resolutions, French operations, American drones, all came with grand vows to tame the chaos. But the chaos grew, swallowing towns, schools, and hope. Bamako was never meant to birth a revolution. Yet, on June 20th, 2025, it became the epicenter of a seismic shift in African history. Inside the Alioune Blondin Bay Peacekeeping School, a place once synonymous with UN seminars and Western military drills, the air was electric with purpose. No international observers filled the room. No translators juggled French and English. No carefully worded apologies softened the edges. Just three defense ministers from Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger sat at a table, their faces set, their words sharp. This wasn't a negotiation, it was a war council. Behind closed doors, they stamped and signed documents that confirmed what whispers had hinted at for months: the creation of the Confederation of Sahel States, AES Army. Not a joint exercise, not a symbolic gesture, but a single, unified force, a continental army designed to patrol, deploy, and fight across all three nations as one.
The choice of venue was no accident. Named after a Malian diplomat who died seeking peace in Angola, the Alioune Blondin Bay School once stood for compromise, for multilateral dreams of stability. Now, it hosted a radical departure. The old security models, built on foreign aid, foreign troops, and foreign agendas, were being erased. Mali, once a reluctant host to international peacekeepers, was now the architect of a new doctrine. A few years ago, the idea of Mali leading a military alliance with its neighbors would have been unthinkable. Expelling French troops, rejecting Western frameworks, and surviving sanctions had made Mali the blueprint for defiance. Now, that defiance was policy. The meeting wasn't about optics. There were no staged handshakes, no press conferences, no smiles for the cameras. Just paper, real, stamped, signed paper, laying out a joint deployment protocol. Soldiers from any AES state could now operate freely across borders. A base in Ouagadougou could send troops to Gao.
A command center in Niamey could direct drones over southern Mali. No bureaucracy, no foreign embassies, no waiting for clearance from Paris or Washington. This was an African chain of command forged in the crucible of necessity. What stood out most wasn't what was said, but what was left unsaid. No mention of NATO. No nod to MINUSMA, the UN's failed peacekeeping mission. No reference to ECOWAS, the regional bloc these nations had abandoned. This meeting was a universe unto itself, self-contained in scope and ambition. Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger weren't just declaring independence from old systems, they were building a new one. But to understand why, we need to dig deeper. Why now? What broke in the Sahel to make its leaders believe only they could protect their land? Let's take a moment to thank the Black Culture Diary community, where African voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By joining us, you're not just supporting this channel, you're fueling a movement to reclaim and celebrate Black history. Become a member today and be part of the story. Now, let's dive back in. At its peak, the Sahel was a fortress of foreign intervention. France's Operation Barkhane flooded Mali with thousands of troops. The UN's MINUSMA deployed blue helmets across the region. The US built secret drone bases in Niger, their surveillance nets stretching across the desert. Billions were spent on counterinsurgency. Diplomats jetted in with promises, and every time the message was the same: we're here to defeat terror. But terror didn't shrink. It spread like wildfire. Armed groups outsmarted foreign planners, slipping through the bush while urban outposts stood fortified. UN patrols, bound by strict rules, became easy targets. US intelligence, vast but disconnected from the ground, failed to stop the bleeding. By 2020, entire regions, northern Mali, eastern Burkina Faso, and western Niger, were no-go zones. Towns turned to ghost cities. Roads vanished under insurgent control. Schools shuttered, their chalkboards gathering dust.
The Sahel's people saw something worse. Foreign troops rarely died. Their convoys avoided ambushes. Their bases, embassies, command centers, logistics hubs stood untouched. It was local soldiers who fell first, local villages that burned. Mothers buried sons while foreign generals issued reports. Whispers grew into accusations. Were these outsiders here to help or to contain the chaos just enough to protect their own interests? When Malian forces begged for air support, it was delayed or denied. When Burkina Faso asked for equipment, they got consultants. When Niger questioned the strategy, they were told to be grateful. Aid came with strings, weapons with conditions, sovereignty with a leash. Then came the breaking point. Reports in 2021 revealed French forces had struck secret ceasefires with certain insurgents, redirecting attacks across borders to ease pressure on their own operations. For Sahel leaders, this wasn't just betrayal, it was a death sentence for their people. A war that could never be won because the rules were written elsewhere. Coups swept the region. Mali in 2021, Burkina Faso in 2022, Niger in 2023. The West didn't ask why soldiers seized power, they just cut aid and imposed sanctions. But in the barracks, the answer was clear. We were dying for someone else's war. This is the crucible that birthed the AES. Not just a military alliance, but a rejection of imported failure. A vow to never again rely on outsiders for protection. But building an army from scratch, without NATO weapons, French instructors, or US satellites, is no small feat. How do you fight when you're alone? And how do you win? Like, share, and subscribe for more stories on African history, culture, and identity. Let's keep this movement growing. Now back to the Sahel. No NATO manuals, no IMF loans, no consultants in polished suits. Just war-torn maps, worn boots, and a shared truth. Nobody else was coming. The AES army was born from necessity, not abundance. After cutting ties with Western partners, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger were left with depleted arsenals, mismatched weapons, and battle-weary troops. But they also had something foreign powers never had: total control. Control to reimagine not just how they fought, but what kind of army they were building. At the second Bamako session, the focus was construction. This wasn't about dreams. It was about drills, chains of command, and terrain strategy. The AES army would be a fighting machine, shaped by the Sahel's unforgiving landscape. Step 1, unify the doctrine. Mali's French-influenced tactics, Niger's US-style counterinsurgency, and Burkina Faso's patchwork systems were incompatible, so they tore up the old playbooks. A new doctrine emerged built for joint patrols, rapid cross-border deployment, decentralized intelligence, and asymmetrical warfare. This would be taught at AES combat academies, with the first opening on reclaimed land in northern Burkina Faso. These schools wouldn't just train soldiers, they'd forge a shared identity, ensuring a soldier from Niamey could fight beside one from Timbuktu without hesitation.
Next, the command structure. Unlike ECOWAS or African Union forces bogged down by bureaucracy, the AES army would have a rotating high command. Each year, a different state would host the strategic headquarters and appoint a supreme joint chief. This rotation would build trust through shared hardship, not diplomacy. A digital AES military grid is also in development, a secure network bypassing Western surveillance, linking outposts via encrypted data streams. Military engineers from Mali and Niger, with help from Algeria and Iran, are building satellite-independent nodes that can operate under blackout conditions. Logistics came next. Military corridors, upgraded roads and rail lines will ensure troops, fuel, and munitions move freely across borders. Procurement is shifting to Russia, China, Iran, and Turkey, who are supplying drones, armored vehicles, and small arms. AES leaders are even planning joint arms production, starting with ammunition factories in Burkina Faso and drone assembly in Niger. Most radical of all, no foreign deployment clearance. If one state is attacked, the others respond. No paperwork, no waiting, no approval. This army exists to defend territory, people, and purpose, not bureaucracies. But a military is more than weapons. It's a statement. The AES isn't just fighting insurgents, it's fighting an idea that Africa can't defend itself. This army is the weapon of a new ideology, one that rejects external control and redefines power in post-colonial Africa. It's not about serving a flag, it's about defending an awakening. The Sahel has always been a paradox, a region of endless wars, yet the least control over how they're fought. Every threat brought outsiders, not with support, but with conditions. Weapons came if elections followed Western scripts. Aid came if trade deals favored global markets. Bases came with immunity for foreign troops. The AES changes that. It's not just a military, it's a symbol of sovereignty. A question: who does the African soldier serve? The Constitution or the people? For decades, Western-trained African militaries prioritized stability over sovereignty, crushing dissent to protect fragile systems. But in the Sahel, those systems collapsed, not from coups, but from dependence. Foreign embassies shaped security, IMF contracts shaped budgets, presidents answered to think tanks, not their people. The AES flips this. Military power follows sovereignty, not the other way around. To defend your land, you must own it. To own it, you must break the systems that profit from your insecurity. That's why the AES calls itself a confederation, not an alliance. A collaboration of equals, not a hierarchy led by distant capitals. It's a people's army. In Mali, local hunters associations, long defenders of rural lands, are joining paramilitary planning. In Burkina Faso, civilian watch groups train with patrols. In Niger, tribal elders guide recruitment in unstable zones. This isn't just manpower, it's a military rooted in the Sahel's soul, something no foreign force could replicate. This is Pan-Africanism with teeth, not 1960s slogans, but a realism forged in the desert, in the memories of villages lost while foreign generals debated. The West watches not because it fears the AES today, but because of what it could inspire. If this works, what stops Guinea or Chad from following? What if ECOWAS crumbles?
What if Africa's wars are no longer shaped in NATO offices, but in African war rooms? And what if the people believe liberation needs no permission?
The real test looms. When the AES army moves from plans to battle, the world will watch. But the Sahel isn't watching back. Do you think the rest will resist? Can they afford to? Is Africa now impossible to control? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to Black Culture Diary and hit the bell icon for more stories on African history, culture, and identity. We're bringing you the untold stories of a glorious past and a bold future. Until next time, stay tuned.